Good evening, everybody. My name is Rajesh Kapileshwari, and I'm an engineer with the local engineering firm, Ethos Engineering. We do energy efficiency and sustainable building design. I'm very thrilled to be here. Never thought as an engineer I would be introducing an indie film, so this is kind of fun. I am a fan of movies. I love indie films, but one thing interesting is the biggest grossing movies of all times are science fiction films. Does anybody know which ones those are?
Star Wars.
Very good. Star Wars is one of them, and Avatar is the other one. And somehow it seems like people love movies about the end of the world. Asteroids, big apes, dinosaurs. So people enjoy seeing spectacular destruction on a planetary scale on movies. And one of the sub-genres of the science fiction is, I call it the cli-fi movies, the climate change fiction movies. And it's difficult to make those movies and difficult to sell them. You know, would you want to go see a movie about rising of the seas by 2 feet over 100 years? Or rising of the temperature of the planet by 2 degrees over 50 years? That would be a slow movie. It would be like seeing, the frog in a pot of hot water on a stove, and you slowly turn on the heat, and you wonder whether the suspense, whether the frog is going to jump out or die. It's just a story, but nobody's going to want to see that. So Hollywood decides to make big apocalyptic films, doom and gloom, like the Waterworld with Kevin Costner. The polar ice caps have melted and there is no dry land left anymore. Or movies like Mad Max, Fury. There it's just the other way around. There is no water left anymore. And again, it's a dystopian world about end of humanity. These movies can make money, but they seldom sway public opinion. People go back home and they feel helpless, and it does not galvanize them into action. So I'm not sure whether a climate change cli-fi movie genre makes money usually, but there's this other set of movies, like the one we're going to watch tonight, an indie film. And indie films are more realistic. They're more about people, about their problems, about family structures, about poverty, about what people think and feel, and it more appeals to your heart. And in this movie that we're going to watch, it's about this 13-year-old girl, Laudere, and she is going through a tough time with her family, but she is also very passionate about science and about doing something about global warming. And she keeps struggling through all these things. And I think it's a good picture of our society right now. So before we get into all the science behind the concerns Laudere has, let's take a snapshot of today's society. Every time I mention global warming or climate change, I'm a little worried how it's going to be perceived. There seems to be a war on science. I saw this report, and this was an old report, 2012, that US teens are ranked 24th in the world in science, 31st in the world in mathematics. And every year, this seems to be sliding back a little bit. Now, a month ago, I saw another poll. They polled about more than 8,000 people, 18 to 24-year-olds. And what was very interesting was 84% of the people polled believed that Earth was actually a globe. And that, I don't know if these were trolls, the other people, or what it was, but that is scary. So to me, climate change, global warming is a problem. The bigger problem is ignorance. And that's the bigger fight we have on our hands. One of the interesting things is, as our government these days is scrubbing out all the words like climate change and global warming off of the federal websites, there's one glimmer of hope. 6 California cities recently sued big oil, 17 big oil companies, And under oath, finally, the big oil companies said, oh, fine, yes, climate change is real, and climate change is going to be bad, and it is man-made. But don't blame us, blame yourselves. So they countersued these 6 cities. The good news is, at least the merchants of denial have been silenced, if not permanently, at least temporarily, and that's the first step. So that's the snapshot of current society, snapshot of what's happening on a planetary scale. And this is more interesting from a science point of view. For 10,000 years, we had about 280 parts of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere per million parts of air. So 280 ppm, that's how engineers talk. In the last 150 years, that level has risen from that to 407 as of last year. That's 45% increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And it is all since the Industrial Revolution, all man-made. This may not sound like a big number in the million parts of air, but carbon dioxide being a very strong greenhouse gas, it is affecting our planet significantly. There's a report out there by one of the biggest banking companies in the world, Citigroup. They said that we have a very fixed carbon budget. And right now, today, we have already expended 2/3 of that budget. And if we go beyond that and expend all of it, we will hit the scary 2 degrees Celsius mark. That is, the planet is hotter by 2 degrees centigrade over what it used to be before the Industrial Revolution. And that 2 degrees centigrade mark is where we would not be able to turn this planet back. So that is really a significant number. The last time we were at 2 degrees centigrade above this level, the sea levels were 20 feet higher. There were no polar ice caps. We don't want to see that. And if you think the tornadoes and the hurricanes and the drought conditions are worse right now, we are only at 7/10 of that centigrade above the pre-industrial level. Can you imagine 2 degrees? Now here's the other scary thought. The rate at which we're going by 2100 will be about 3.5 degrees above. So I don't even want to think about that. Now, there's a personal nightmare situation in my head, and I'll share that with you. There's this layer of permanently frozen ground in the Arctic called permafrost. And if this ground is frozen for consecutive 2 years, it's defined as permafrost. This permafrost has about 1,600 billion tons of carbon material frozen. As the planet is warming, that carbon material, the organic material, is thawing and rotting, giving off carbon dioxide and methane. And that carbon content is 2 times more than the entire carbon content in our atmosphere today. So that is the nightmare situation. And that is like the end of the world situation that I can think of. So what are we going to do about it? So people at NASA have been watching this, thinking about this. They came up with 2 solutions. Adaptation, simple, like Darwinism. We do something and build our cities resilient enough, build our civilization resilient enough to deal with it. Well, they can barely fix the potholes in my road. I don't think they can build our cities to take care of these issues. The other part is mitigation. Mitigation is trying to slow the negative effect of man-made carbon content in the atmosphere. So the first thing is energy efficiency. Every project I do, I can promise people I can save you 25% of the energy on existing buildings. It's simple to do. We are very wasteful. The second is transitioning to a carbon-free or low-carbon economy, going with renewable energy or something. That is an easy way. Third way is transitioning from fossil fuel cars to electric cars. And then the carbon sequestration is the other big thing. What it means is, your power plants spewing out carbon dioxide in the air. If you capture it, you compress it, liquefy it, you transport it, and you bury it deep underground, maybe we have a solution. But this is so expensive, and there are technological challenges, and it's energy intensive, that I won't hold my breath for that. Now, we can slow down our carbon generation and let the earth heal itself. 2 or 3 ways we can do that. Trees. Forests are amazing. Every tree can consume about 22 pounds of carbon dioxide a year. Well, the problem is each one of us is responsible for 17 tons of carbon dioxide a year. So we would need a couple thousand trees each. The other problem is deforestation. Every year we are cutting down 25 million acres of trees. I can't even imagine that. I read this article which said 10,000 species are going extinct every year, which means more than one every hour. And I checked that, triple checked that, making sure it was not fake news. And yes, Yale University and several other universities backed up that information. So that is one way of trying to slow this down. The other way is oceans are a great sink for carbon dioxide. So if we could figure out a way to put iron fertilizers in the sea and hope the phytoplanktons absorb the carbon dioxide, and then figure out a way to drag that plankton deep into the ocean and sink it down, maybe we can do it. But again, it sounds very unlikely we'll be able to get there. So this looks like a very hard problem to solve from an engineering point of view. There's a chemical way of doing it. Calcium silicate, magnesium silicate. If you expose it to carbon dioxide, you can make calcium carbonate, limestone. That is a good way of storing carbon dioxide. So people are looking into that. Again, from practical, pragmatic point of view, this is hard. So we have a serious problem on our hands, but people are trying to solve it. And like the person, Lauderdale in our movie, you have to be passionate and try to figure out a way. And there's a real life child, my hero now. In 2007, this boy, Felix Finkbeiner from Bavaria in Germany, he was 9 years old. He was doing a project for his elementary school. And at the end of the project, he recommended that children from every country in the world should plant 1 million trees. And that would be really, really good. And that was in 2009. He started a little organization called Plant for the Planet. Germany got involved, United Nations got involved. 9 years later, the global children's movement has planted 14 billion trees. And now this 18-year-old, he's a university student in London. He says, well, let's take it up to 1 trillion trees. And again, university folks got involved. They said, oh, we have room for 1 trillion trees, let's do it. So recently I went and bought some trees. It's only 10 cents per tree, and they go plant it in the tropics somewhere where it can grow fast. And since it's backed by the United Nations and Germany and many other big countries, I think it's legit. And I like what this little kid is doing, and I wish more children get involved and get passionate about it. So all in all, we do have to solve this thing. Many people think that, oh, this is way into the future. It's not. 70% of the people that are around here today, around in our cities, our family, they will still be alive in 2050 when we start feeling pretty severe effects of this climate change. So we will live through this. So it is our problem. Every family will get affected. So what can we do? Well, each of us can take steps. If you can afford it, go transition to a hybrid car or to an electric car. If you can afford it, start buying your electricity from a renewable co-op. Duke Energy is starting that. I don't know when exactly, but they have plans. Eat local, grow your own vegetables. Our food travels 2,000 miles. We can solve it that way. Raise your thermostats in the summer. Lower your thermostats in the winter. So we can very easily take steps to to reduce our carbon footprint by 70% over the next few years. And if each one of us can do it as a society, we can really take steps towards this thing. We could vote according to our beliefs and vote for people who would do something about this. We can't hide anymore. Some friends ask me, well, how do you talk to people who don't agree with you? Well, there's several ways. Find out what motivates the other people. If it's financial, tell them about that report I just told you from Citibank. It's called Energy Darwinism. They say that we have two options: do nothing, and the cost will be $44 trillion over the next 25 years. Or go to a carbon-free or low-carbon economy, and that's the cheaper way. And if the banks are saying it, if the economists are saying it, we should pay attention, because it's not just the tree huggers. The other people are the US military. They said climate change is going to be a threat multiplier. Migration, thirsty people, hungry people, people who don't have jobs are going to migrate, and they're going to gravitate to ideologies are extremist in values, and that is going to be a national security issue for us. So if the US military is saying, go deal with this, maybe you can increase the awareness in some of your friends who don't agree that climate change is the problem. We can do it. Well, start training children, make them interested in science, get them interested in recycling and sustainability and energy conservation. They are our future. They're going to solve it. The frog that I talked to you about, I don't want to be that frog, slowly boiling to death. Actually, let's get back to that frog story. People in MIT and Harvard got together to figure out if this is fact or myth. They put a frog in a cold water pot and slowly turned on the heat. 4.2 seconds later, the frog jumped 10 inches, exited safely. They put a frog in a lukewarm, nice warm bath of water, raised the heat. 1.2 seconds later, the frog jumped 2 feet, saved itself. What are we going to do? Are we going to jump out? Well, now's the time. See, here's the thing. We are the first generation that will actually see the effects of global warming. But we are also the last generation that can do something about it. The dinosaurs didn't see their extinction coming. We did. And what's our excuse? I'll leave you.